Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Fast.
So we are filming this in June 2020 in the midst of...
June 2020.
Yeah, quite a month. In the midst of some very serious talks and calls for diversity in publishing, especially for Black creators.
Yes.
So part of that
call.
conversation... I'm sorry?
Important calls.
Very important calls, necessary and overdue calls. I think we can all agree.
Mm-hmm.
But part of that conversation that we've seen is editors opening up their inboxes and DMs to Black creators to sort of skip the whole agent step and to get considered by a publisher, which is fantastic too.
Yeah, so typically, especially at big five publishers, they are closed to unagented submissions. Even so much so that, I think it's gotten more and more restrictive over the years, because I noticed that even editors who go to conferences will tend not to request material, but say, have your agent send it, or when you find an agent, have your agent send it, rather than request it directly. So it's a pretty big deal when a publisher, a big five publisher, specifically smaller publishers, do often open to unagented material, but for a big five to do it, it's a pretty big deal for them to open up their query inboxes to unagented materials.
Right. What we wanted to do today, though, was explore the very best outcome that could come from something like that, and that's an offer from a publisher. So we've talked a lot about how to handle an offer of representation from an agent, but there are some slight differences in terms of how to handle that from a publisher, and we did want to give as much information to anybody who might be taking those opportunities right now or in the future, because while this is a big movement right now, it also does happen in other genres for romance writers, and they do happen pretty often that publishers will open up to unsolicited submissions. So just to kind of
and there are even smaller publishers, or even part imprints at big publishers that might always be open.
Right.
And, of course, our goal is to help the author advocate for themselves as much as possible and protect themselves. One of the things we've noticed is that when the calls went out, specifically on Twitter, and editors were announcing that they were now open, a lot of agents were sort of panicking and trying to say to authors, okay, this is great, but because we agent's job is,
it's our instinct to like protect what's going on,
protect the author, and we didn't feel in those situations that the publishers were necessarily giving the information in totality that the author needs to know.
Right. So let's walk through it. You just got this email from an editor who loved your book and is so excited about it, and they are pleased to extend an offer for publication. What do you do from here?
You say thank you.
Yes. First of all, let's one thing I do want to point out, you do not have to respond immediately. You should respond timely, in a timely fashion, but you do not have to respond as soon as you see that email. Take a moment, process the excitement, but also process a strategy for where you're going. And that's what we hope to help you process, but just take that first breather.
And if a moment is a day, that is
perfectly fine. We always advocate the 24-hour rule here.
Yes. So we think the 24-hour rule isn't just for negativity. Sometimes it's just to have a thoughtful response.
Yep.
So what I always say is say thank you, and then celebrate.
Yeah.
Call the people that you love most in your lives, those first calls that you always call with your good news, and really just let it out.
Yeah, celebrate. Scream a little bit, cry a little bit.
Yeah.
It's an exciting time.
Champagne and chocolate, or whatever because it's all about food, whatever your go-to celebratory snack is. And enjoy the moment. But the most important thing is that you don't accept anything. You don't respond with this looks great, I accept it, let's do this. Like, you don't want to make that decision yet. Or at all, maybe until you have an agent. So I would say, yes, thank you. I would recommend that you get an agent. And I would also hope So, back in the day, I love doing back in the day. Back in the day, when I was an editorial, we were actually open to unagented material and slush. And I would often, as an editorial assistant, that's where I would find my clients because I wasn't necessarily getting the agented material. So I have a lot of times as an editor offered on unagented authors. And for me, I wanted to work with an agent. I wanted to negotiate with somebody who understood the business and who I didn't feel I may be taking advantage of.
Right, and, I mean, and starting off that relationship on a right foot, it's a lot easier to do when there's an agent who's advocating for the author in all the
Yeah.
proper ways that we know, or as editors know, should be done. And that's not to say that an author can't do that, but it's to say that most authors do not have that level of understanding of what goes into an offer. And again, not a slight, of course, but just
Yeah,
that.
but I mean, there are just certain things in life that you hire a professional to do.
Yeah,
You probably hire a lawyer to write your will. You hire an accountant to do your taxes a lot of times. You hire a real estate agent to sell your house. There are just things that people know the ins and outs of that it's worth paying them to do. Hopefully, and this is a call out to all the editors in these situations, the editors are saying to you, if you have an agent, can you put me in touch with them? Or if you don't have an agent, you know, I would suggest you find the time. And sometimes the editors may even give you suggestions.
right. And I think if they don't, it might be fine to ask as well if there's
Oh,
any
I would
recommendations.
totally feel
Yeah,
comfortable asking the editor if they have a list of maybe 5 agents they would recommend you talk to. That's what a
exactly.
great way to start.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's 5 agents that that editor, having worked in the business, has come to respect themselves. I don't think they'd ever recommend something that they don't feel would be a good fit for you.
well, no, because they're not usually agents they want to work with either.
Right.
They're gonna recommend people who, also have a good reputation in the industry because
Exactly.
they like working with them.
Right.
I would keep querying. If you've sent your material to a publisher, definitely keep querying. So even if you don't have an offer from any of those people you queried, and even if they haven't requested the material, if you have a short list of those that you feel most strongly about, contact them, explain that you have an offer on the table from a publisher, and follow the same sort of guidelines we recommend when you have an offer of representation for an agent with an agent. You contact them, you give them a deadline, you know, 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever it is when you want to make your decision by, give them that deadline. And then interview the agent in the same way you would interview them if you had another offer of representation.
Yes, and I also think in this case, it's a good chance to talk to the agent about where you see your career going, and then that should be done on any call. But
Yeah,
because this is happening with an offer in hand, you want to make sure that that agent is going to be equally as excited for where you're going as to where you're coming in with this offer. That obviously an agent sees an offer and like, great, that's great news. This is also guaranteed money right now. But
yeah.
you want to make sure that they are equally as enthusiastic about where you're going.
And you also want to know how they're going to handle this offer,
Yes.
because there are a
Yeah,
lot
you're
of,
in a great position because you're throwing them right in the thick of things.
yeah, and there's a lot of opportunity that you might not have if you negotiated it yourself. One might be, is there a possibility of sending this around and getting multiple offers? You know,
Right. Especially if the agent feels like the offer could be better for that type of book.
yeah, or even there could be a better house for that kind of book or a better
Definitely.
editor for that kind of book. Um, they could say, no, I think this is perfect and explain why. There's no right answer sending it around versus moving forward on this offer. There's no right answer to that. It's really how you feel about the way they answer and
This
whether
is
it
one of those
matches
things
what
that
you would
comes
like.
down to gut.
Yeah, yeah. Also, find out how they would negotiate it. I will tell you right now, you don't want an agent who's like, it sounds like a great offer. I can accept that for you.
Right.
You want to make sure they're going to negotiate.
Right. Every
And
offer can be better. There's
yes,
always room for improvement on every initial offer.
and keep in mind that might not be the money necessarily. There's a
No,
lot of, it might not be the obvious like advance payment, although I would say that would could probably always be better too. But there might be there's a lot of other stuff that we're negotiating that is also money, just not the obvious one.
right.
So yeah, so definitely take your time and then let the editor know. Thanks for reaching out. I am interviewing agents. I've asked them to get back to me by such. The more information you can give everybody, the more everybody feels like, okay, that sounds good.
In full
No edit.
transparency too, like laying out what
Yes.
you're doing, when you're doing it, when you hope to have that decision by, that is the best thing that you can do. And also, every party should respect that.
Yes, that's what I was going to say too. Yes, there should be no agent or publisher who pushes you to accept the offer either without an agent
Exactly.
or pushes you to accept the offer on a timeline that is not conducive to you finding an agent.
Yes.
I mean, you shouldn't take months. It should just take a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think this
But
whole thing can be rectified under a month.
yes, yes. But, if you're feeling pressure from a publisher to accept the offer that does not allow you to get an agent,
It's
I
concerning.
would, yeah, it is concerning. I would question the publisher then, and then if that's somebody you want to work with,
Yeah. Exactly.
because there's a lot an agent can do, and I do think sometimes people get into, well, I got the book there myself. Why should I have to pay the agent 15%? And I will tell you that in some way, shape, or form, that agent will earn you back that 15% and more.
Yeah, because there a lot goes beyond submitting is probably the easiest job.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes beyond that. There's the initial offer negotiation, which of course is what you just received in your inbox, but there's also contract negotiation. And a lot of times editors and agents will have worked with that publisher and we have boilerplate language that we can offer you. And then there's, submitting option material, managing career beyond that, processing all of your payments because they usually go through the agency.
Yeah.
So there's a ton that goes beyond what an agent does in that initial offer stage that
Yeah.
will, like you said, make up for their 15% tenfold.
Yeah. And those next steps beyond the contract negotiation are actually vitally important and a lot easier for me to help you with as an agent if I'm in there almost from the ground floor,
Yeah,
because sending an option material is one thing, but brainstorming and planning for the option material in a way that grows your career is part of what I want to be involved in. Negotiating that contract, does it make sense to negotiate a multi-book contract?
right.
Or is it better as a one book contract based on what they're offering and willing to pay may play into that decision?
Yes.
So there's a lot of sort of nuances to it that an agent will really help you with. And talking big five, especially, and respected publishing houses, I don't know an editor who's going to try to stop you from this.
No.
Not only do they hope that the author has an advocate, remember that editors work for the publishing house. So their job when negotiating isn't to protect you.
It's supposed to get the publisher the best deal for that book.
Right. So they can be the nicest person in the world, and most of them are, but they can only negotiate and present the offer in the way that they can. They can't then say to you, well, I would suggest
Right.
you get this clause. That's not their job.
Right.
So,
And also they're not going to respond to your email accepting or anything like that, saying, well, we can do more money. Like we can do that. Once you accept it, like, once you're moving, like if you're not asking the right questions, they're not giving you those answers, which they are armed and ready to give you. Exactly. So take the time, make sure that you are both going into it informed, armed, ready to go, and hopefully with an agent right there at your side to help you navigate the
yeah.
whole process.
And we're really passionate about this, as are a lot of agents, because you shouldn't feel fear in taking the time you need to find the right support system for your career. And
It takes a village.
it takes a village, and I don't want you to get into a situation where you've shorted yourself in your career.
Yes. Okay. Well, don't forget to like and subscribe.
And find yourself an agent.
Yes. And
And
if you
good
got
luck.
that offer and you're watching this video, congratulations. Go sell.
Yeah. Yes, yes, we're thrilled for you. And we will see you all soon.
Bye.